what, ladies and gentlemen? Well, first off, I'm Gabe Ibrahim alongside Calvin Wetzel. Calvin, how you doing today?
I'm good. What a time to be
Uh,
alive, Gabe. It's the
what a
playoffs.
time! It's the playoffs, and I was not ready to say that it was a playoffs because
There
it's
it
the
is.
playoffs, baby. That works much
Playoffs.
better. That works much better in an audio only medium. But yeah, so we're here in the Her Hoop Stats Happy Hour. Oh, I forgot my beer. Gosh darn it. Well, you can imagine what we'd be drinking right now. It's a lovely day here in Washington, D.C. And for Calvin, where are you exactly, Calvin? I want to say Chicago, but I don't know.
It's like a couple hours south of Chicago, Normal, Illinois, actually.
Oh, okay. Actually, I know a lot about Normal, Illinois, but we won't talk about that tonight. We're going to talk about the playoffs. And we're going to start you off by telling you about where the standings ended up after an absolutely crazy weekend of WNBA action. The 8 seed and the 1 seed were up for grabs as of yesterday afternoon after some absolutely insane games, including that Dallas New York game where New York really put the screws to me. I was hoping to get all my playoff stats ready. Like, it's time to start picking teams as soon as New York had that lead with about 30 seconds left, and then they completely collapsed and Dallas beat them. But nonetheless, the Mystics won and were able to get that last playoff spot. So our standings as of the beginning of the playoffs, which is tomorrow night, the Las Vegas Aces snagged the 1 seed from the Seattle Storm with an 18-4 record. They're tied with the Storm, but they won both games against the Storm, right? Is that how they won? They got it?
It is. Yep. They swept them.
Yeah. And honestly, that was something I was not prepared for. Were you prepared for the possibility that the Aces would get the 1 seed? I knew it was obviously it was a possibility, but I just kind of always assumed the Storm would kind of pull it out.
I did too. I would say I first became prepared for that to be a realistic possibility, like going into yesterday,
Okay.
When the Aces beat the Sparks on Saturday and it officially became a winner take all for the 1 seed. That's when I started. Okay, the Aces might actually win this game. Brianna Stewart isn't playing. They might actually get the 1 seed. I didn't really think about that possibility too much before then.
No, I agree. And it was just kind of out of nowhere, but this team in Las Vegas has been one of the best teams in the league all season. And it shouldn't surprise us that much. It was just, we talked so much this year about Seattle being one of these amazing teams, and they did finish with one of the best net ratings ever in their offense and defensive rating. But end of the day, Las Vegas was able to snag that 1 seed. Seattle being the 2 seed. Both those teams, let's just put them off to the side because they have a bye to the semifinals. So we won't be seeing them play for a little while now. Then we have the Los Angeles Sparks getting the 3 seed. Bit of a disappointing finish here in their last few games. They're 6-4 over their last 10. They dropped a couple games that maybe they should have won. They're also dealing with some injuries, as we'll get into later. The Minnesota Lynx hold on to that 4 spot. When it kind of got hairy, if you listen to our last live stream, we were kind of worried about Minnesota not holding on to that 4 seed, but they were able to do it. And now they will get a bye into the second round. So we won't be seeing those 2 teams until Thursday. And now the meat of this playoff sandwich, this delicious playoff hero sandwich, is right here in the 5 to the 8 seeds. These are the teams that we're playing tomorrow night to kick off the playoffs. We have the Phoenix Mercury grabbing the 5th seed after a really strong push here in the last 10 games. They are 7-3 over those last 10, and they have been on fire at points, and then they completely collapsed in other games, but that's to be expected with a team that's basically running with 7 players for most of the time. Chicago fell to the 6th seed after dealing with injuries to both Diamond Shields and Azrae Stevens. They will take on the Connecticut Sun, who are in the 7th seed, and then the Washington Mystics, as I mentioned, grabbed the 8th seed and are in the playoffs. Again, the defending champs remain defending at least for another day. And then the teams who are all out of it have gone fishing. We have the Dallas Wings, the Atlanta Dream, the Indiana Fever, and New York Liberty in that order. Bummer for you guys, but hey, you get to leave Bradenton, Florida, which Bradenton's fine, everyone. I'm not going to make fun of Bradenton, but it's fine. It's also okay to leave there and go home to see your families and various dogs. Also, shouts to all the WNBA players posting pictures and videos of them seeing their own dogs because it's very cute, and I'm very here for it.
Gabe, is your dog in the room?
My dog is in the room, but it's gonna take too much time for me to like switch the camera. He's over there sleeping. He's extremely cute. I'll post a picture of him in a little bit.
Please do.
So let's get into the playoffs, Calvin. As I mentioned, tomorrow, 7 p.m. on ESPN, our first playoff game is the Chicago Sky against the Connecticut Sun. I'll give you some vital stats and some season series stats from these two teams. So Chicago finished the year with a 105.7 offensive rating, which is fourth among playoff teams, a 102.7 defensive rating, which is worst among playoff teams, and a 3.0 net rating, which gives them the fifth best net rating among playoff teams. Connecticut similarly is last in offensive rating with 101 points per 100 possessions so far this season among the playoff teams. 99.5 defensive rating, which is good for fourth among the teams remaining, and a 0.6 net rating, which is seventh. In the season series, Chicago took the first game 100-93 on August 8th. On August 14th, these teams played again. Connecticut beat the Sky 77-74. I wouldn't put too much stock in that because, as I mentioned, both those games were played with Azrae Stevens and Diamond Shields on Chicago, and both of those players have now left the bubble. So we're kind of dealing with a different situation. So that season series, while it's split, it doesn't necessarily bode for what's going to happen. So Calvin, this is your team. This is your closest team here. This is the team you've been following all season long. Tell me what you think about the Chicago Sky and what they can do to get back into the rhythm here in this playoff game.
Yeah, well, I'm not optimistic. We've talked before about
Yes.
the fans who think their team's way better than they are and the fans who think their team's way worse than it is. I might lean towards the second one. I might not give this guy enough credit, but they're 2-6 without Diamond Shields and Azrae Stevens since those two left the bubble. Excuse me. That's not not winning basketball. And you mentioned it's basically the worst playoff offense in the Sun against the worst playoff defense, worst in terms of points per possession.
Right.
To me, the key is going to be transition because even against the Sky's defense, which hasn't always been that great, I don't think the Sun are going to have a very easy time scoring in the half court. But when they get out in transition with Alyssa Thomas, handling the ball, they can be really dangerous. And the Sky have struggled a lot with turnovers. That's one kind of bugaboo that they've had. They are third. They're the third worst team in turnover percentage in the league. If they start, giving the Sun turnovers and free runouts and transition possessions, the Sun are going to be able to score, and they're not going to have to necessarily rely on grinding it out in the half court offense. The other aspect is that the Sun are first in offensive rebounding percentage, or actually, second in offensive rebounding percentage, just a hair behind the Lynx.
Yes.
They crash the glass. They're relentless with, again, Alyssa Thomas. Brianna Jones is big on the offensive glass. And over the last 2 weeks, kind of in that stretch that the Sky have been, struggling, the Mercury are the only team worse than them in defensive rebounding percentage. The Sky really, especially since they lost Azrae Stevens, have not been able to keep teams to one and done. So I think the Sun are going to get a lot of extra possessions, a lot of second possessions. And that's going to be another key. So I'm picking the Sun to win this game.
Yeah, I also have the Sun, but I do want to talk a little bit more because I do agree with you. I think transition is going to be huge. Although, I was pretty surprised today because I think of DeWanna Bonner and Alyssa Thomas as two of the best transition players in the league. But this year, Connecticut has the fourth most transition possessions among playoff teams, according to Synergy, but they're last in points per possession on those transition attempts. So to me, I was kind of surprising because I think when I've, anecdotally, right, like you watch them and I'm like, oh, wow, like if they get the ball moving downhill, it's over, especially with Alyssa Thomas. But they've been more effective they've been less effective, in the transition game than I expected them to. I think rebounding is going to be huge, like you mentioned. Defensively, the Sky have just not been the same team without Azrae Stevens specifically. Diamond DeShields is also a huge part of that, but she was struggling with injuries all season long. So she was kind of in and out of the rotation in terms of how many minutes she was playing. So I just, I'm concerned about what they can do to stop Connecticut, because this is a team that has offensive talent. They went from 4th in rebounding to 8th in rebounding after the injuries to Diamond and Azare. Their defense just kind of went in the tubes. They have a 107.2 defensive rating in the games without those two players, which is just awful. That's giving up way too many points. So I'm really concerned about their defense. Offensively, obviously the Sky are going to get theirs. I don't think there's any question about it. They have Courtney Vandersloot. They have Allie Quigley. I think Steph Dolson's been providing some good stuff this year when she's been healthy. I also think Cheyenne Parker has been really good. Kalia Copper. All of those players can get theirs, and I think they will get theirs. However, Connecticut really matches up pretty well with Chicago's personnel on the defensive end. They have 2 guards who can guard anybody in Brianne January and Jasmine Thomas. Their bigs are very versatile. They can move well. They can switch a lot. There's not going to be those sort of – it's going to take a lot of brilliance from Courtney Vandersloot to keep Chicago in this game, which she's capable of, right? Like she is totally capable of keeping Chicago in this game just on her own. And I think if Allie Quigley's hitting their shots, they have a great chance. But I don't know. I'm with you. I'm picking Connecticut because it's just, man, like, you're gonna need a lot of things to break your way. This is the thing, though, that could break their way pretty easily. Is Jasmine Thomas is dealing with plantar fasciitis. Brianne January is dealing with a dislocated finger. If either of those 2 injuries get worse in the game, they've been able to manage the pain in the past few games, both of them, and play. But if those injuries make them a little bit more gimpy, I think there could be an issue for Connecticut because they don't have a ton of depth right now. And I think it could come back to bite them if those 2 aren't able to stay healthy for an entire game. And remember, this is a single elimination, so we could say all the things we want, right? Like we could bring in all the stats and all the numbers and say, oh, this, but any given night, one team could beat the other. And I think both these teams are certainly capable of winning here. So anything else on Connecticut and Chicago?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you brought up the injuries for those guards with the Sun because, the Sky, they have capable bigs. Dolson can shoot, obviously. Cheyenne Parker's having an outstanding season, but they don't really have the type of bigs who go and just kind of create their own offense and get their own shot. Everything starts from the backcourt, obviously, specifically with Courtney Vandersloot, to some extent Quigley and Kalia Copper. So if you have a healthy or even 90% healthy Jasmine Thomas and Brianne January, they can really make things frustrating for Chicago's backcourt, make it difficult for them to score. I do think if both teams play their best basketball, Chicago Sky wins this game. I think the best Chicago Sky is a higher ceiling than, what the Connecticut Sun have. I'm just not sure if the Sky are going to play their best basketball. We haven't really seen it. Even in their win, their one win in the last 5 or 6 games over the Wings a couple days ago, it didn't really feel like it was their best basketball. It felt like they kind of struggled. The last time that I feel like the Sky kind of played to their potential was when Courtney Vandersloot had 18 assists a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Well, and then that was, I believe that was that Azare's last game, or was that after she had left them?
I think that was after Azare left. That was basically the only really quality game the Sky have put together since she left. And if they play like that, they will win the game. But sure. I'm not sold that they will.
I think, if we're expecting a more median outcome, it's going to be closer to a game that Connecticut can win. But like you're mentioning, it's just whoever shows up and whoever can give their best performance will win. Also, I forgot to look up the odds for this game, so let me see if I can find them.
We got to do our picks against the spread.
I forgot where we were last week. Let me. I believe you are still undefeated.
Really? I did not even. I did not know that, but.
Yes, I'll check. I'll check a little later at some point. Man, I cannot find these WNBA games, which is very annoying, people. Oh, there it is. Okay. Nope. No odds on the games yet. I guess I wanted to see who is playing and who's not. but you can get the Connecticut Sun plus 222 to win the title.
Okay.
You can get the Las Vegas Aces plus 160 to win the title.
That's
a
good.
good bet.
That's a good bet.
That's a good bet.
That's a value bet.
All right. And then the Sparts at plus 650. I mean plus 1200 for the Phoenix Mercury. I don't know, man. Let's talk about the Phoenix Mercury. Let's get into it. Let's get into the Phoenix Mercury taking on the Washington Mystics at 9 p.m. on ESPN. I'll give you their vitals again for both these teams. Phoenix has a 104.5 offensive rating. That's fifth best among playoff teams. 101.8 defensive rating. That's sixth among the teams remaining. 2.7 net rating against sixth. And then Washington has a 101.1 offensive rating, which is tied for last with the Connecticut Sun for last among playoff teams. 102.2 defensive rating, which is seventh, and a negative 2.1 net rating, which is last, which makes sense because they are the eighth-seeded team who barely snuck into the playoffs. In the season series, Phoenix had a couple really nice games against Washington. On August 23rd, Phoenix beat DC 88-87. That was a game that Diana Taurasi put on Kobe's jersey. Well, put Kobe's name on her back and put up 34 points on 11 of 13 shooting from deep, which is insane. If you haven't seen that game, go back and watch some highlights because it was unbelievable. She also had like the very Kobe foul calls where she just kind of intimidated the ref into calling that foul, which I'm sure Kobe was smiling down watching the White Mamba do her thing.
Well, they knew they'd see her in the lobby later, so
they did.
Even Kobe never got that advantage.
He definitely said that to someone, right? I mean, Kobe and Diana are like they're two peas in the pod.
Wouldn't you have loved to see Bubble Kobe though?
Oh man,
Bubble Kobe would have been fun.
Bubble Kobe, he would have like made a movie inside. Like the guy never slept. I don't think he ever slept a wink in his life. But it was a great game. Go watch it. Then in the second game of this season series on August 28th, Phoenix really put it down on Washington, 94-72. In my opinion, it was one of the worst outings for Washington this season. And I think that was kind of one of the kicks in the butt that got them going. Because in the next couple games, they played Connecticut decently. They played Seattle pretty close after that, and then they ripped off a winning streak. Well, not a winning streak. They went 4-1 in their last 5 games to get into the playoffs.
They needed all 4 of those.
They got in by the hair of their chin. They went 3-0 to start the year, if you recall. 1-11 in the middle, and then 4-1 in their last 5 games. Pretty miraculous that they got into the playoffs. And the reason why is that they locked in defensively. They've done a really good job of communicating, of getting the switches that they, getting what they want to do on defense in tow. I think Leilani Mitchell has been much better in defensive end in those past 5 games, and they've had the league's best defensive rating over those last 5 games. Also, Maisha Hines-Allen, really, I guess she heard how much we said that Banaj Eleni was a lock for most improved player. She said, no. You guys got to see what I'm going to do right now. She put up 23.4 points per game, almost 60% from the field, 60% from 3, 10.2 rebounds per game, 3.8 assists per game, 1.8 steals per game in the last 5 to get the Mystics in the playoffs. So absolutely phenomenal stretch there for the Mystics. Similarly, the Mercury are 7-2 in their last 9 games since Brittany Griner and Bria Hartley went down. I know it's oxymoronic to kind of think about that, but they've been fantastic because they're playing free. They've really only played with 7 players most of that time, so they're just playing loose. And both these teams are really hot. And I think to me, this is the series where if someone's going to make it to the semifinals, as we'll talk about later when we reveal our playoff brackets, if someone's going to get to the semifinals out of this weekend, it's going to be from this game. So Calvin, what do you think? Who you got?
I am going to go with a Mercury in this game. You're right. Both teams are playing very well. Maisha Hines-Allen is playing a lot better than she was during that week. The 2 games you mentioned were actually ended up being back-to-back because in between we had the days of reflection. So 5 days apart, they played each other twice in a row. Maisha Hines-Allen is shooting 51% this year. here's where I'm looking at. Granted, she's playing a lot better in the last week too. Against the Mercury, though, in those two games, she shot 32%. She was 9 for 28. A big part of that, and both of those games were since Griner left. A big part of that, we've talked about the defense that Brianna Turner has been playing since Griner left, really all year even. It's just been more evident and more important since Brittany Griner left. But she really shut Maisha Hines-Allen down in those games. Less than a third of her shots. It's going to be interesting to see if Hines-Allen kind of, has it figured out going into this third matchup against them, and if they find ways to get her going. Because they don't have a ton of scoring in the backcourt, which is where the Mercury are weaker on defense. Obviously, Skylar Diggins-Smith and Dana Taurasi are much more offensive players. You do have Ariel Atkins, who I think is going to have to step up and have a really big game for them to win this game. I'm excited about playoff Diana Taurasi, though.
Yeah,
the last time we saw her play a playoff game was 2 years ago. The Mercury were also a 5 seed, like they are this year. They ended up making a run to the semifinals and took the Storm to 5 games. The Storm went on to win the championship and sweep the Mystics in the finals. So the Mercury had a really big-time run out of the 5 seed the last time we saw Diana Taurasi in the playoffs. I'm excited to see playoff Diana again.
Yep. Well, so here's actually my stat for this. There's only been 4 teams in the current format to play in the first round and make it to the semifinals. The list is as follows. The 2018 Mercury, as the 5th seed, as you mentioned, played that tremendous game. They were one Sue Bird explosion away from making it to the finals. Then the 2017 Phoenix Mercury, as the 5th seed, also made it to the semifinals. And then the Phoenix Mercury in 2016, as an 8th seed, also made it to the finals. And then the only team outside of the Phoenix Mercury with Diana Taurasi to make it from the first round to the semifinals is this 2017 Washington Mystics, who made it from the 6th seed. So this is, it's tough, but these two teams, specifically a lot of the people on these teams are the same people. Skylar Diggins-Smith is obviously new for Phoenix, and obviously the whole host of new players for Washington. But there's players here who have played in those series and made it through and understand how it's going to work. Also, as Shay Jennings, our person making the clicks and clacks to make us look good and come up with all the nice pictures around us. She reminded me that I should mention how the playoffs actually work, because maybe some of our listeners don't know. And then we'll get into my Washington pick. Don't worry. But the way it works is the first round, the single elimination. So this is the 5 through 8 seeds play in this single elimination round. The next round will then again be single elimination with 3 and 4 seeds playing the whoever wins of these 5 and 8 seeds. And then we reseed at that point. So every round we reseed. So if the 8 seed wins, let's say Washington wins, they will play the highest seeded team in the next round, which would be the 3 seeded Los Angeles Sparks. Then we have the semifinals, which is a 5-game series with the 1 and 2 seeds. And again, we're reseeding, right? So if Washington, let's say, makes it to the semifinals, they will be taking on the Las Vegas Aces regardless of what else happens. Then the 2 seed will play the next highest seed. And then we got the finals, which is a 5-game series. This is not the show for this. I'd probably do things a little differently. But that's neither here nor there. That's neither here nor there. I'm going to disagree with you here. So did you make your pick yet for Phoenix?
I did. I'm going with Phoenix. I'm going with playoff Diana.
I love playoff Diana. I think she's going to be amazing. I also love playoff Skylar. She's also going to be amazing. As we know, these two players can do it. I'm very excited for playoff Maisha Hines-Allen, because since those games against Phoenix, as you mentioned, right, like 32.1% from the field, that's the worst shooting percentage she has had against any team in the league this year. 12 points per game, which is the second lowest against any specific opponent for the Mystics this season. However, I just think Maisha in the past week, and I know it's a lot to say from like a week of basketball, but she's added a lot to her game, in my opinion. She has some more dribble moves. She's been able to stop doing that one little shoulder fake in the post. She hasn't just tried to overpower people, which none of those things are going to work against Brianna Turner, because she's so good. She's so sure-footed. She just knows all the angles. She has She's very good both physically and a cerebral defender that you're not really going to be able to just kind of either overpower her or do some easy move on her. Like, you're going to have to beat her off the bounce. You're going to have to beat her with some picks. So I think Maisha has added enough in her game to make me say that she will play better in this game than the past few games. I also think Leilani Mitchell, as I mentioned, has stepped up big time. They're going to need her to play great against – I'm assuming she's going to be on Skylar Diggins-Smith for most of the game. They're going to need her to play great defensively. I think she's also just going to need to hit some shots. She's hit her open threes as of late. I also want to see what Ariel Atkins can do as far as managing her defensive intensity while also giving a lot on the offensive end. That's something that I've noticed with her is like when she's covering someone who's really, really strong offensively, there's less to give on the offensive end. So I think those 3 players will be okay. The key person is Emma Miesemann. If Emma's going, if Emma can get going, and Emma can hit her shots, and Emma can score in isolations, and Emma can do what we saw her do in last year's playoffs where she won the Finals MVP, then I think Washington is going to win this game because Phoenix does not have an answer for both Maisha Hines-Allen and Emma Miesemann. So that's why I'm going to go with Washington, primarily because I drink the Kool-Aid with this team. I really do. I don't want to lie to you guys. I drink the Kool-Aid with this team. I'm really big on their culture. I just think that they have the pieces certainly to beat Phoenix in this game. It's really if those pieces show up. And I trust Emma to show up in a big moment because last year, her team needed her to score in isolation. Her team needed her to step up and be a scorer in the playoffs, and she did that. In the regular season, it's been tough for her because there's not as much time to prepare her mental, I think, to come in, day out and be the superstar because you're wearing a lot of different hats. In this game, I'm not really sure if she's going to be approached as a superstar. I think Maisha Hines-Allen will get a bulk of the attention for Brianna Turner, and then that should open up Emma Miesemann to have a big game. We'll see, though. We'll see. I'm this is my pick that I'm less certain about, and I'm really just going off of gut, and I just think Washington's going to win.
So, Gabe, you are going with 2. You're going with 7 and the 8 seed, 2 upsets in the first round.
Oh yeah,
I like it. Gabe, I think we missed an opportunity here, though. If anyone hasn't noticed yet, Gabe has the Mystics and the Mercury jerseys behind him. I think we missed an opportunity for you to do who's the guy on the college football, who puts on the helmet when he makes a pick?
Lee Corso?
Yeah, him, Lee Corso. I think we missed an opportunity for you to go back there and pick the jersey and put it on to make your pick for this game.
I see it. I do have a Connecticut Sun jersey. Oh, shoot. We messed it up, guys.
We could have done it for both. Yeah. No, well, we're going to have to do this all over again.
Well, don't worry, guys. The headgear pick is in. Mystics go into the second round. I got that shirt for free.
I had no idea Gabe was wearing that under his hoodie, for the record.
Yeah. Yes, this was all planned. Run it back to back. Man, we're not gonna indulge in my fan fiction where the Mystics win their second title in a row. It's not impossible, but I don't think it's gonna happen. Also, I'm looking back through the playoffs right now on Wikipedia to see there has never been. Man, I should have consulted this before I said all the things I said. There's never been double barrel upsets in the first round of the WNBA playoffs. This year's very different. Because I think the Sky are very different and the Phoenix Mercury are very different. But yeah, maybe this comes back to bite me in the ass. No one show this to Diana Taurasi.
Well, there's a lot of things different about this year, with the bubble and the 22-game season, and there's so many injuries and so many, obviously, there are opt-outs before the season, and teams are banged up, and the new format's still relatively young. This is year 5 of the new format. If this were ever a year where we could see it, if there were ever a year where you could see it, it would be this year, 2020. Yeah. Crazy things happen. Here's another point I want to throw at you, though. Speaking of everyone being banged up, particularly these 2 teams have played a lot of games down the stretch with 7 or 8 people available. The Mystics last played on Friday. Yeah. They got to chill out for 2 days.
The Mercury.
The Mercury. You're right. The Mercury last played on Friday. They got to chill out for 2 days while the Mystics had to play a back-to-back in which they needed to win both games to finish the season. That's 48 extra hours of rest the Mercury are going to have as a head start going into this game tomorrow. while the Mystics will have coming off of 2 games in the last 72 hours. I'll be interested to see if this is a close game in the fourth quarter, which I think it will be. I think we both think it will be. I don't think either one of these teams is necessarily going to pull away before the fourth quarter. How will the fatigue factor affect the Mystics in particular?
So, this is my most Galaxy brain take, I think, on this game, is that playing all these games, right, like, is going to give – man, this is a dumb take, but this is actually what I think, though. Like, playing all of these really tough games for the Mystics is actually going to make them stronger. Like, this is something I've been worrying about with the Miami Heat. We went 31 minutes until our first Miami Heat reference.
Time for Shay to put the Miami Heat counter now. How many times? We need one corner Miami Heat and the other corner Brittany Sykes counter. How many times can we mention each of those 2 topics on this show?
One of the things I'm worried about the Miami Heat is, like, they've had too much time off in between series. So it's like you have so much momentum from the first series and you're feeling good about yourself. And now you just had time to think through the basketball. I don't necessarily think it's going to hurt Phoenix to have those days off, but I don't think it necessarily hurts DC to have to play like this because they've been doing it all season, right? Like, they just played a back-to-back and had to win both games, and they did. They've been playing every other day for the entire year, so I'm not sure it's really going to affect them too much in a negative way. And also, thanks to Shay Jennings for her tremendous graphic that we can only see. We're seeing it a little bit later than you guys because we're a little bit behind, but it is very nice and I like it a lot, and she does a great job.
I actually don't have it pulled up, but whatever's on the screen right now probably looks awesome, I'm sure, because
now
Shay.
I think right now it's just our faces.
Oh, well.
And certainly I look great.
Yeah, Gabe, you look great. Half of the screen looks awesome right now. I still need a haircut. Maybe I'll look great after I get a haircut. Gabe got a haircut the other day, and he looks awesome. And he's repping the orange hoodie.
I did get the orange hoodie. It took like 2 months to get here. Okay, back to basketball. All right, let's get into the rest of our bracket. So we are picking the entire bracket. Obviously, we're gonna have to do some magic here to make it so we can talk about these games. So my second round matchups are Washington against Los Angeles in the second round, and then your matchups would be I have Washington versus Los Angeles. Then I have Connecticut versus Minnesota. Your matchups would be Los Angeles versus Connecticut, and then Phoenix against Minnesota. Which one of those games do you want to hit first?
Let's go with the spicy one. I'm going with the Sun over the Sparks.
Ooh, that is spicy.
Partially because we got to give the people what they want. No one wants boring chalk picks. Yes. That's no fun. But over the last 4 weeks, the Sun have actually had a higher net rating than the Sparks and the Lynx. The Sun have been third in the WNBA over the last 4 weeks, which is like half the season. Yeah. That's a significant stretch of time in this shortened season. Kurt Miller has obviously been to the finals last year. The Thomases have been to the finals. They have, a lot of playoff experience. Bonner has won a championship with Phoenix. So this isn't one of those 7 seeds who, if the Wings or the Fever or someone or the Dream would have snuck in at the end of the playoffs, kind of has a bunch of young, fresh new faces to the playoffs. This is a 7 seed who has been there and done it before. Not that the Sparks haven't. Obviously, a lot of the players on the Sparks have. Candace Parker, Neko Ogwumike. But Derek Fisher has not had success in the playoffs. This is his second year. We don't have to get into too much how last year ended, but it didn't end well for the Sparks.
Wasn't great, Bob. They did win one game, though, in fairness.
They did win one game. They won a game at home that they were supposed to win. They were 1-3. We'll give them credit for the one game. Yes. I'm still going with Kurt Miller as the coaching advantage until Derek Fisher proves otherwise. Yeah. And I am also going with, I mentioned when we talked about the Sun and the Sky, that the Sun are top 2 in offensive rebounding, best in the league outside of the Lynx. The Sparks are 12th in offensive rebounding. The Sun, I think, are going to dominate the shot volume of this game. They're going to get 10 to 15 more field goal attempts in this game. It's just a matter of if they shoot well enough to win, I think. Because they're going to get more shots. They're going to win the turnover battle. They're going to win the rebounding battle. The Sparks are probably going to be more efficient on those shots, but will it be enough to make up the gap? I don't know if it will be. And there's no home court advantage, obviously. I think I've been proven wrong early in the season. The home teams were still winning like 60-some% of their games. And I thought there was something to it. They ended up exactly 66 and 66. So
Hilarious.
There's the chances of that are pretty slim, even if it was a coin flip. But the Sparks aren't going to have that typical home court advantage that they would have in a regular year. I'm going to go with the Sun to be that team to come out of the first round and make the semis this year.
So first off, I have news. The WNBA found another assist for Courtney Vandersloot, so she has officially become the first player in WNBA history to average 10 assists per game. Congratulations, Courtney. Yes, immediately after we eliminated her from the playoffs.
I need to see what that assist is now. I'm curious whether how far did they have to stretch that?
The mystery assist.
They went through and looked at every pass that she made throughout the season and figured out which one is like the closest to maybe being an assist. Let's give her that one.
She was at 9. She was what, at like 9.6 or something?
She was at 9.95. She was one assist away from 10.
Well, there she goes. She got
9.95.
Someone gave her an assist. I'm very proud of that person. Good for them. And then the other thing is if you're joining us on Twitter or YouTube, drop us a question. We'd love to answer. We're just chilling here, talking shop, happy hour style. I forgot my beer. I'm very disappointed with that. But regardless, you guys know we're hanging out. So here we go. All right. So Los Angeles. So obviously you have them playing Connecticut. I have them playing Washington. I have a similar result, though. I'm picking, again, drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit. I'm picking Washington over Los Angeles. My thinking is similar to yours. Is that LA Coach T has a coaching advantage over Derek Fisher. That might be a little overblown because I think LA definitely has the talent advantage on paper. But Tara Ruffin-Pratt and Sydney Weiss have been injured for the past few games. In the last time DC played LA, they beat the Sparks 80-72, and no Tara Ruffin-Pratt, no Sydney Weiss. If both those players are out, I think the spacing and the defense becomes a big problem for LA because they rely on each other's help a lot. And I think that's why I've kind of been I've been very out on the Candace Parker's Defensive Player of the Year campaign, which has been mounting. She's a great defender. I'm not saying she's not, but she hasn't been like that sort of force defensively because they're helping so much. And I think that's what they do best. But without Sydney Weiss and TRP, that defense kind of falls apart. And I would look for Maisha Hines-Allen to cook on Candace Parker one-on-one. She had 30 in the last matchup. I think that's a very tough matchup for Candace Parker because Maisha's just a little bit stronger, and Candace doesn't want to bang. Candace wants to help. That's what she wants to do. And when you're on Maisha Hines-Allen, you really don't have an opportunity to do that. Even if you switch her on to Emma Miesemann, you really can't help off Miesemann because of her shooting talent. And I think Miesemann's spacing also helps take Nneka Ogwumike a little bit out of what she wants to do defensively. Now, LA should be able to score in DC rather easily, in my opinion, because of their personnel. And like when you flip those matchups on the other side, LA should be able to score, but they just haven't been scoring lately. They're 7th in the offensive rating in the last 5 games. I don't see, how they pull themselves out of it without getting TRP and Sydney Weiss back now. Coach Fisher has said that he hopes to have at least one of them back for the semifinals on Thursday, but we don't know yet. So I'm going to kind of tread carefully. So if those two are healthy, I'd probably pick LA. If those two are not healthy, I'm picking Washington. And since I'm assuming they're not, I'm picking Washington in that one. And because I want to be a little contrarian hipster. So let's move on now. So you have Connecticut moving on to the semifinals. I have Washington moving on to semifinals. Again, that would just be the 5th time that has happened in the playoff current format, and the first time since 2018 that a team that played in the first round made it to the semifinals. Let's move over to the other matchup, anchored by Minnesota. You have Minnesota against Phoenix. I have Minnesota against Connecticut. I'm picking Minnesota, and here's why. I think Sylvia Fowles is coming back. I think Coach Reeve, from what she has said, it seems like Sylvia Fowles is coming back. And Minnesota desperately needs her. Over the last half of the regular season, Minnesota ranked dead last among playoff teams in defensive rating with a 107.9 defensive rating. That's just not going to cut it. That's not good. But with Sylvia Fowles, they've been a much stronger defensive team, and Nafisa Collier is all over the place defensively. She's been a great player defensively despite that defensive rating for Minnesota. So I'm giving Sylvia Fowles the benefit of the doubt that I'm not giving to LA, just because of the wordings of these press conferences. So go with me here. If Sylvia Fowles comes back, I'm going Minnesota. If Sylvia Fowles does not come back and it turns into a rock fight, I'm going with Connecticut. I just think they have a stronger defense and they have more people that can get a bucket late in the game. But even if Sylvia Fowles is not there, I'd still think Minnesota has a good chance because they can get hot shooting with Bridget Carlton and Rachel Banham. Those two have been proven that they can get hot shooting, and Cheryl Reeve will come up with a plan to attack your team's weaknesses, especially if you're hurt. So I think Minnesota still has a great chance if Sylvia Fowles is not coming back, but I'm assuming she's coming back, and I'm picking Minnesota because of it. So who you got in your 4-5 matchup there?
Yeah, well, I think both of those players you just mentioned with the shooting, Banham and Carlton, did I see that they both set a Lynx franchise record for 3-point percentage this year?
Did they? Potentially.
I think they, if I'm wrong, feel free to send me hate mail on Twitter, anyone who's watching. I think they both broke whatever the previous Lynx franchise record was. So you're right. They can absolutely light it up. I have the Lynx versus the Mercury in this matchup. I'm also going with the Lynx for similar reasons. I think Sylvia Fowles is going to play. And, Sylvia Fowles, like you said, on the defensive end, it's night and day. She changes everything, being able to anchor their defense in the paint, funnel things into her. Since Griner left the bubble, Skylar Diggins-Smith, no guard has taken more shots in the restricted arc than Skylar Diggins-Smith in the entire league.
Interesting.
In that span. There's your nugget for the night. She relies on getting into the paint. I think it's going to be a lot easier for her to get into the paint if Sylvia Fowles is not in there. I don't know. Fowles doesn't play. This would be an interesting one to look at because, we talked about the Mercury, 3 of the 4 teams to come out of the 5 through 8 round and make the semifinals are Mercury teams. The last 3 times that they played in the playoffs with Diana Taurasi. So it is a very interesting team to look at, and definitely a team that can make some noise, I think, especially if Fowles is not in there protecting the paint. Mm-hmm. I do think Fowles is going to play. She'll impact the offense some. I think she's going to be a tough matchup for Brianna Turner, but Brianna Turner, I think, can basically guard anyone at least reasonably well. I think Fowles is really going to have that impact on the defensive end, though. So I'm picking the Lynx to move on.
All right, Minnesota, moving on. Yeah, I like their story too. Like, I'm gonna picture Reeve in a playoff game. No shade to for me, Kurt Miller, and for you, Sandy Brondello. 2 great coaches in their own right, but I just think Cheryl Reeve is gonna be able to pull together a smart game plan. But it'll really depend if shots fall. I mean, they're right. Like, that's the crazy part of the single elimination as we enter the semis series round is like, anyone can have an off night. It's the NCAA tournament, right? Like, that's why you love it because there's always upsets. We haven't had a whole slew of upsets as we mentioned throughout the show, but I think it's going to happen this year just because of how crazy it's all been.
We've never had a year where the underdogs didn't have to go on the road either. So
right,
this could be the year.
Well, that's a big thing too. Like, you don't think about how much that travel affects you, especially right after a season. Like, imagine if the Mystics just went through this really emotional, tough road to make it to the finals, and it's like, hey, you got to fly to Phoenix and sleep in a hotel for a couple days after flying coach, right? Like, that's a big deal. So maybe there's something to that. Certainly, we're picking upsets because we want to, because if not, it's no fun. So here's let's go to the semis. Just like March Madness, like, right? Like, I always have that's my downfall also in March Madness is if Miami's in, I always have a bracket that picks Miami. to go all the way, just in case, right? Just in
I don't
case
know.
it
That
happens.
could be a 12 seed. Could happen.
Yeah. Just in case it happens, you never know when you don't want to be the person who's not there for your team when they need you to pick them. So let's move over. Let's move to the semifinals. Now it's the series. It's a little harder to analyze these from so far out. We don't know what injuries may happen. We don't know what it's gonna be like when those series rolls around. So I don't have as much analysis here. If you have analysis here, Calvin, go ahead. So let's start with the 1 seed. So my 1 seed is playing the Las Vegas Aces. The 1 seed is playing the number 8 seed Washington Mystics in the semifinals. And then for you, it would be Las Vegas versus Connecticut. So who you got in your semifinal series?
Yeah, well, I probably spent too much time analyzing this for a matchup that's
ahead.
not actually likely to happen. But if the Aces do play the Sun, great run for Connecticut. I have Las Vegas with a sweep though. Asia Wilson shot 48% this year. She was that undersells how efficient she was because she gets to the line so much.
Yeah.
She really has the efficiency of a 50+% player, but she shot 48% this year. Against the Sun, she shot 69%. She feasted on Connecticut. I think she would do it again. 3 straight games. I have her averaging maybe 25 in that series if it happens. The Aces have the lowest turnover percentage as well. The way they play, they don't turn the ball over. They therefore allow the fewest points off of turnovers to their opponents, which again is, what I talked about with the Sun earlier in the show where they can thrive. You mentioned that they I actually didn't know that their points per possession on transition is the lowest out of the 8 playoff teams. I still think it's important for them to get in transition because I still think even if you're scoring less points per possession in transition than other teams, you're probably still scoring more points per possession in transition than what you would be in the half court. The Sun really struggles sometimes in the half court offense, and I think the Aces would force them to get into that half court offense a lot more than a team like the Sky would or like the Sparks would. So I'm going with the Aces and just a pure beatdown in this series if it happens.
Yeah, I'm similar to you. I just think against the Mystics, it's Vegas sweep them up. And they, no shade. I think the Mystics have some better personnel actually than Sun to match up with Las Vegas. But man, I just don't know how you stop Asia. I don't know how you stop De'Erica. That's it's just as transition for Vegas is that's their lifeblood, right? And to me, there's just no way you're not going to be able to stop it. And I think the Mystics, over a 5-game series, they're just not going to be able to prevent the Aces from getting out and running. I think, it'd be pretty much a beatdown for me. But I'll have to think about it a little bit more. Like maybe Washington get 1 game if all their shots are falling, if they get really hot. But I just think over a 3-game series, it'd be pretty clear who the best team is. Also, there'd be a nice revenge matchup for Vegas after last season losing to Washington in the semifinals. And in semifinals, that was much closer than the final result, which was 3-1 for Washington. So that'd be really fun, actually, to see. That's why I'm picking it, because I want to see it. All right, let's move down the bracket to the Seattle Storm, the 2 seed. In my bracket, they're taking on Minnesota. In your bracket, who are
also
they playing?
Minnesota.
Oh, they're all right.
We
Cool.
do have this one the same. We can talk about it.
We're finally talking about the same series, people. So I actually have this one as Seattle winning 3-1. I think Minnesota gets a game, especially if Sylvia Fowles is back, as we're both assuming. If Sylvia Fowles is there, their defense is going to be able to stand up to Seattle. So the Seattle Storm are a bad matchup for everyone in this league, particularly Brianna Stewart having to cover. Sylvia Fowles having to cover Brianna Stewart would be a massive problem. But I still think Minnesota gets a game, and I think Seattle moves on pretty convincingly and somewhat similar to what that Vegas-Washington series was last year. But I just trust Seattle, man. They got the goods, especially if Sue Bird is healthy. I'm assuming Brianna Stewart's okay because there hasn't been a ton of reporting on that. But I think Sue Bird's gonna muscle it out and try to play. And if she does, I think it's gonna be more or less a cakewalk. What about you?
Yeah, I actually also have 3-1 Seattle. The Storm are too good to lose in, their first series. Stewart, by the time they get to I think game 1 of this series will be on Sunday. She'll have had over a week off by then. I'm going to assume that she's, like you said, we don't know a lot about the injury, but over a week off, I'm going to assume that she's going to be ready to go. And I think the Storm defense, the way that they trap ball screens, that they're so aggressive, on the perimeter, is just going to make it really difficult on a small rookie like Crystal Dangerfield in this series. I do also think the Lynx will get a game. I think, if your shots are falling, basically anyone can beat anyone, and especially a team like the Lynx, who we mentioned has 2 really prolific shooters on the wings. You get Rachel Banham going, you get Bridget Carlton going. I think they can take a game, but I got the Storm over the Lynx in 4 games. And here's a stat for you. Here's a list of the teams that did not play a game against the Storm and get closer than 15 points this year. Lynx and Liberty. Those are the 2 teams. Both of their losses to the Storm were 15 plus. Those are the only 2 teams that's true for. Granted, if Sylvia Fowles is back, Sylvia Fowles did not play in that second game. So grain of salt. Playoffs is always different. I just don't see. I'm higher on the Lynx, honestly, than I think a lot of people are, but I still don't see them getting it done against the Storm.
Interesting. So you're going with the sweep there too?
I'm going 3-1.
Oh, 3-1. Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. That's just how it kind of works, right? Especially when you've been sitting around waiting to pummel teams, you typically pummel them. So we got to where we wanted to this season, right? We got to where we wanted to with Las Vegas and Seattle playing each other in the finals. This was the matchup we wanted pretty much all season long. They've been the 2 best teams for the vast majority of the season. And again, we're going to do more shows when this gets closer. So we're going to have a lot more information to give.
So all the matchups we just picked that aren't actually going to happen because we're going to be wrong about everything in the first round, we'll pick the actual matchups.
This one, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. This is the thing I'm most certain about, that it's going to be Las Vegas and Seattle in a 5-game series. And I think it's going 5, first and foremost.
I agree with you.
I think it's going 5. And like last year, Connecticut, Washington went 5. It was a delight. It was an amazing series. And as long as we don't have any injuries, I think we'll be there again. I'm going with Seattle in 5. Complete gut pick. No, I have no anything. I'm sure Calvin has some stats here. I got nothing. I'm just telling you, gut feeling. Seattle in 5 over the Las Vegas Aces to win a title. Yeah, I got nothing. Calvin, what do you got?
Yeah, well, usually gut picks beat stats anyway. When we fill out a March Madness bracket, I always analyze everything way too hard, and then other people who don't know anything always have better brackets than I do. So, whatever. My analysis doesn't mean anything. I don't know what I'm talking about. That being said, I'm going to throw it out anyway. To start the season, we had our panel where we made picks for awards and teams, different sorts of things for the season. I got everything wrong, except this is the only one that has not been wrong yet. I picked the Aces to win the championship. So if I can go 1 for 4, I got to stick with this pick. I definitely think it's going 5 games. I get that Breanna Stewart didn't play the second game, but the Aces did sweep the Storm. In the first game, the Storm were legitimately trying, Angel McCautry, I think, and I hope that Bill will unleash her a little bit more in the playoffs. She played exactly 20 minutes a game. I don't think he's going to hold her to 20 minutes a game. I think he's been holding her to 20 minutes a game in order to, let her free a little bit in the playoffs. I'm expecting more like 27, 28 minutes per game, I hope, in the playoffs. And I think that's going to be a big factor. When she's on the court, she has been one of the top 10, maybe even 5 players, on a per minute basis this season. She hasn't had as much of an impact in terms of value because she's only played half the games. But in terms of her production, she's having one of the best years of her career. The other factor, these two teams both, interestingly, are the top two teams in allowing the most 3-point attempts to opposing offenses and the fewest 3-point makes.
Mm-hmm.
So, in other words, it's a little bit like, honestly, the Bucks. I'm teeing you up to bring up the Heat again when we come back to you. But the Bucks just love to let all the shooters who aren't that great at shooting just jack them up. And, they pick who shoots. They take away the really good shooters, and the other ones they say launch away. They don't make them. Both of these defense are kind of built like that. I think that favors the Aces. The Aces don't really care if you get into a series, a battle where threes become less of a factor. The Aces don't need to make threes. They'd be fine playing a series where neither team makes a single 3-pointer. The Aces are going to win every game if you play like that. So I'm going with the Aces in 5. I think the Aces are going to get their first championship in franchise history in their third city. And I'm excited for it. I'm excited for this matchup. I hope it happens.
I'm glad you brought up Angel McCoughtry. This is the one piece of analysis I do have. As you mentioned, she's going to play a lot more minutes in these playoffs. Angel, if you're unfamiliar with Angel McCoughtry, playoff Angel McCoughtry, you should get familiar. She holds the record for the most points in a WNBA playoff game with 42 on September 7th, 2010 in the Eastern Conference Finals for the Atlanta Dream. Different player now, but is she capable for going off for like 30 points in a game? Certainly. Would not surprise me at all. And then if you look at the list here provided by Across the Timeline, shouts to Across the Timeline, as always, for making me look smart, of the top 7 playoff scorers, every single game playoff record for scoring, of the top 7, Angel McCoughtry has 4 of them. And all in different years. In 2010, she scored 42 points. In 2014, she scored 39 points. In 2011, in the finals, she scored 38 points. And in 2016, she scored 37. She's looking for her first WNBA Finals championship. She's looking for her first WNBA championship. So she's going to go crazy. As my light just went out. I cannot believe that thing. It just got so heated up from Angel McCoughtry energy. And
it's just telling. It's foreshadowing. The Angel is going to be lights out.
Oh man, what a great joke. You know what? Let's wrap it up there. We have our picks in. We will be putting out our brackets on Twitter, on whatever things we use now. I'm not sure Shay's in charge of all that. She's much younger and better at this than we are. But if you're still around, we really appreciate you guys tuning in. I hope you guys are going to have a lovely Monday. If you're watching this on Tuesday, have a great time with the games. If anyone got injured that we did not mention, remember that's not our fault. That's just the unmistakable march of time. Oh, and I do want to end on this note. We did find the assist given to Courtney Vandersloot. And guess what? It was 100% legit.
Really?
It was a pass into the post to Cheyenne Parker, who got a and one against the Dallas Wings, and it was credited to Allie Quigley. And before you get on the scorekeeper, it was pretty hard because obviously Allie and Courtney look a little bit similar from behind, and Courtney kind of moved over to the side, and Allie took her place. So it was a little hard to tell. But that is the assist that makes Courtney Vandersloot the first player in WNBA history to average 10 assists per game. Shouts to her. All right, guys. Well, playoffs starting tomorrow night at 7 p.m. on ESPN Eastern. We will be hanging out with you on Twitter during those games. You can follow me at Gabe_Ibrahim. You can follow Calvin at Calvin. What's your at?
C Wetzel 31.
C Wetzel 31. You can follow Her Hoop Stats at Her Hoop Stats, and you can follow Shay at WNBA with Shay and her mysterious personal account that we have no clue what it is.
If you find it, let us know.
If you know it, let us know because we would love to know. All right, y'all have a great day, and we